we had not begun to eat the animals. I believe it was after the flood when he sacrificed the animal to the Lord, that the Lord gave them dominion and said, look, you own part of these animals, you help save them, now they're part of your diet. And I also believe that it changed the way, well, I know it changed the way we live. I think it is an example here of the fall of man. In the garden, God created this perfect society. Everything was perfect. Eve fell to temptation. Adam followed along. And when they were cast out of the garden, while they still lived in a climate that protected them, they had to start working. I had to get ready for work earlier this week, and I looked at my wife. I said, you know, if Adam had just told Eve to shut up, I wouldn't have to go to work. You know, I was pleased to think of the fact that if Adam had paid attention, I wouldn't have to go to work. But he didn't, so now I have to go to work. I have to go do a job. I have to earn money. I have to work by the sweat of my brow. And that is part of the punishment. And I think here, as we look at this and we see this change that happens, we go from the pink sky to the blue sky, from the protective covering that was God's law, that God's perfect law in the garden.
God also in this time created, as you can see, now the different states of matter, because you have the solid of the firmament, you have the liquid of the water underneath, and you have the gas of the sky that's all around.
Oh wow! So in all this that he's making here in this second day, he's setting things up. He's mirroring his law. He's mirroring the fall of man itself, because he's setting up this story that is going to play out, that is going to show perfection that has to be taken away. For God to forgive Adam and Eve long enough to talk to them and to speak to them face to face one more time, he had to, for the first time, kill a lamb. The first being that was created that was ever killed was killed to cover, to clothe with the skin of that lamb, to clothe Adam and Eve. He had to destroy the perfection that was in that lamb so that he could speak to his chosen people, Adam and Eve, and let them know, hey, I still love you, I'm still here, there's still a plan, but it's going to be different from here on out. Very early in this story of creation, all of a sudden now we're finding that God is setting things up for us to understand when we look back at it, that change happens. Things change. God said, I'm going to make this perfect. But he was setting the groundwork so that when things didn't work perfectly, when we did not respond the way we were supposed to, when we made mistakes, God had things set up so that it didn't collapse the world. It changed it. It redirected some things, but yet it still would take care of itself. Now, how does the separation of atmosphere and water allow us to live today? How does all this that he did there, we've talked a lot about what it meant pre-Noah's flood, but what does all this stuff that he did that day, how does that affect us today?
If you think about it, and this kind of goes back to a spiritual aspect too, there are 6 layers of the atmosphere. The first layer is the troposphere, and that's right above us. Then the stratosphere, the mesosphere, the thermosphere, the ionosphere, and the exosphere. And God's perfect number is 7. So his perfect 7th layer would have been the firmament. I think that's kind of a cool deal. That because we destroyed perfection, it took away the seventh sphere. I'm going to show another clip here of Lee Strobel's case for the Creator. This gives some physics aspects. This will talk about the physical aspects of how the Earth is made. So let's watch this.
At the beginning of time, all the matter in the universe has been governed by precisely balanced laws and constants. During an interview with Robin Collins, a philosopher with degrees in mathematics and physics, Strobel learned how these laws offer compelling evidence for a creator and conspire to make the universe habitable for life.
The laws of physics are balanced on a razor's edge for life to occur. For example, if you didn't have something like gravity that pulled matter together, you would never get planets, you wouldn't get stars, you wouldn't get any complex organisms. If you didn't have the strong nuclear force, there would be nothing to hold protons and neutrons together in the nucleus. And so you wouldn't have any atoms, so no chemistry. If you didn't have the electromagnetic force, you would have no bonding between chemicals. You would have no light, and the list goes on. So you need all these sorts of fundamental principles have to be in place in order for life to occur. Wipe out one of those principles, wipe out one of those laws, no life.
Strobel learned that life also hinges on the precise strengths and relative values of many different physical constants. One example of this fine-tuning is the force of gravity.
Imagine a ruler divided up into 1-inch increments and then stretched across the entire universe, a distance of some 14 billion light years. For the purposes of illustration, the ruler represents the possible range for gravity. In other words, the setting for the strength of gravity could have been anywhere along the ruler, but it just happens to be situated in exactly the right place so that life is possible. Now, if you were to change the force of gravity by moving the setting just 1 inch compared to the entire width of the universe, the effect on life would be catastrophic.
No large-scale life forms could exist. Anything that was more than the size of a pea would be completely crushed. So you might be able to get life of a very, very primitive sort, such as bacteria, but you could never get conscious observers.
The strength of gravity is just one of at least 30 separate parameters that must be finely tuned to produce a life-sustaining universe. Another example is the cosmological constant.
The cosmological constant describes the expansion speed of space in the universe. If space expands too quickly, then the universe will spread out so quickly that material objects can't form. So you can't get stars and galaxies and planets and the types of things that we of course take for granted in our universe.
Physicists have determined that the cosmological constant is fine-tuned to 1 part in 100 million billion 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 billion. Such precision has been compared to traveling hundreds of miles into space, then throwing a dart at the Earth and hitting a bullseye measuring 1/trillionth of an inch in diameter, an area less than the width of a single atom.
Just consider those two parameters, gravity and the cosmological constant. Their level of fine-tuning is to a precision of 1 part in 100 million trillion 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 trillion. I mean, that's like 1 atom in the entire known universe.
This fine-tuning is also evident at the atomic level. The strong nuclear force binds atoms together. If the strength of this force were to decrease by 1 part in 10,000 billion 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 billion, the only element left in the universe would be hydrogen. Again, chemical life would not be possible. The fine-tuning of the laws and forces of physics is so precise.
So the physical aspect of it, as you can see, it's almost impossible to have life without the way that God has us spaced, without our universe being, or our galaxy being where it's placed, without our solar system being placed the way it is. If we were 1 degree closer to the sun, we'd burn up. If we were 1 degree further away, we'd freeze. If our Earth's tilt was tilted just 1/2 degree north or south, the Earth would fall off its axis and it would fall out in the middle of space. It is perfect where it's at, and there's no way that any science can explain that perfection. Like you said, it's like going up several hundred miles into the space and throwing a dart and hitting a bullseye less than the size of an atom. So the precision that God created to make life before and after the flood was perfect.
So This stuff that he did on day 2, this creating the sky and the gases, the firmament, is perfection. If we're equating this with the law, then what we're saying is that the